On Christmas Eve, in 1945, the Sodder family gathered inside their cozy home in Fayetteville, West Virginia. Like millions of other American families, they were celebrating the holiday with laughter, gifts, and hope for the year ahead. No one could have imagined that within a few hours, this joyful night would become one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in American history. George and Jenny Sodder lived with their 10 children in a large 2-story house. George had immigrated from Italy years earlier and built a successful trucking business through years of hard work. The family was respected in the community, and Christmas was always a special occasion in the Sodder household. That evening, the children excitedly opened their presents around the Christmas tree. The younger ones laughed as they admired their new toys, while the older children helped clean up after the celebration. As midnight approached, Jenny told the younger children it was time to go to bed, but 5 of them, Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny, and Betty, begged to stay awake a little longer so they could play with their new gifts. Their mother smiled, agreed, and headed upstairs with George to get some sleep. Around 12:30 a.m., Jenny was suddenly awakened by the ringing telephone. A woman she didn't recognize asked for someone who didn't live there. In the background, she heard laughter and loud voices before the caller quietly hung up. It seemed like nothing more than a wrong number, but Jenny found the call strangely unsettling. Before returning to bed, she noticed the downstairs lights were still on, and the curtains had been left open. Assuming the children had forgotten to switch everything off, she turned off the lights, closed the curtains, and went back upstairs. Just a few minutes later, a loud crashing sound echoed through the house. It was followed almost immediately by the unmistakable smell of smoke. Jenny rushed into the hallway and saw flames racing across the roof. She screamed for George as the fire spread with terrifying speed. Within moments, thick black smoke filled the upper floor. George woke the older children, and together they fought their way through the smoke to escape the burning house. Outside, the family stood in shock as flames consumed the home. But then George made a horrifying realization. 5 of his children were still inside. Without hesitation, he tried to rush back into the house, but the intense heat forced him back. He planned to use a ladder kept beside the house to reach an upstairs window, but when he ran to get it, the ladder had mysteriously disappeared. Desperate, George attempted to use one of his trucks to climb onto the roof. Incredibly, both trucks refused to start, even though they had been working perfectly the day before. With every passing second, the fire grew stronger, and the family could do nothing except watch in horror. Delhi. By the time firefighters finally arrived, the house had collapsed into a pile of burning rubble. Officials believed the 5 missing children had died in the fire. But when investigators searched through the ashes, they made a discovery that would raise questions for decades to come. There were no bodies, no bones, no clear evidence that the 5 children had ever been inside the house at all. As the smoke cleared and investigators searched through the ruins, everyone expected to find the remains of the 5 missing children. Instead, they found almost nothing. The local fire department concluded that the children had died in the blaze and that the intense heat had completely destroyed their bodies. But George and Jenny Sodder refused to believe it. They began asking experts a simple question: how could 5 human bodies disappear without leaving behind bones or other remains? In other house fires, even those that burned for much longer, investigators usually recovered at least some skeletal remains. Yet, in the Sodder house, there was no convincing evidence that the 5 children had died there. As the family searched for answers, more strange details came to light. The ladder George had planned to use during the fire was later discovered in a nearby ditch, far from where it had always been kept. Both of his trucks, which had mysteriously refused to start during the emergency, worked normally after the fire. Even more suspicious was the discovery that the home's telephone line had not been burned by the flames. It had apparently been cut before the fire began. Then, eyewitnesses started coming forward. One woman claimed she had seen the missing children looking out of a passing car while the house was burning. Another witness reported seeing several children matching their descriptions at a roadside diner the following morning, accompanied by unfamiliar adults. A hotel employee later said she believed she had seen the children just days after the fire, but no one had taken her report seriously. George remembered something else that suddenly seemed important. Before the fire, a stranger had visited the family and warned him that his house would one day go up in smoke. At the time, George dismissed the threat. Now, he wondered if it had been a warning rather than an empty statement. Convinced that his children had been kidnapped instead of killed, George spent years following every possible lead. The Sodder family printed thousands of flyers, offered a large cash reward, and even placed a massive billboard along a highway displaying photographs of the missing children. They hoped that one day someone would recognize them and reveal the truth. Then, more than 20 years later, another shocking clue arrived. In 1967, Jenny Sodder received an anonymous envelope in the mail. Inside was a photograph of a young man who looked remarkably like her missing son, Louis. Written on the back were the mysterious words, "Louis Sodder, I love brother Frankie. Illeal boys." A 90132 or 35. There was no return address. George immediately hired a private investigator to track down the man in the photograph. But before the investigation could make progress, the investigator disappeared without a trace, and the lead went cold. To this day, no one knows what truly happened to the 5 Sodder children. Did they perish in the fire, despite the lack of physical evidence? Or were they taken that Christmas night, leaving behind one of the most haunting mysteries in American history? Nearly 80 years later, the questions remain, and the answers may have vanished forever. Please like, share, and subscribe for more interesting videos. Your own channel, ZC Untold Files. Thank you.